Today we're going to look at the Hill of Golgotha to look at what might be the most famous last words in human history. Now, if you've seen The Passion of the Christ or you've read the actual accounts of Scripture, you know that the last line, or one of the last lines of the seven sayings, is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The words of Jesus when he was on the cross. But when you hear the detail that most people give, they miss one thing. See, that quote isn't from the Gospel of John, it's actually from Matthew 27:46. Why does that matter? Well, if we look at the basics of this, we have to go all the way back to the reason why Matthew was written. See, Matthew was written primarily for a Jewish audience. He wanted to show them through their own Hebrew tradition exactly who Jesus was. St. John, however, was written for a later, more established Christian community. John's readers already knew the story. They already knew what Jesus said, so while Matthew records the shout, John focuses on the mechanical fulfillment. John is the one who constantly pauses the narrative to say this was to fulfill the scripture. He is showing us that even when Jesus is quoting that cry of abandonment found in Matthew, he isn't actually despairing as a lot of people think. What he's doing is he's identifying himself as the Messiah of 1,000-year-old prophecy. To understand this, we have to understand first century Jewish literacy. Back then, they didn't have chapter 1, 2, 3, 10, verses 1, 2, or 3. There were no numbers on the scrolls. That didn't come for another 1,000 years. If a rabbi wanted to point you to a specific psalm, he would recite something called the Incipit, which is the opening line. It's like a secret code, or if you know music, you know what this is. If I walk into a room and just start singing, "This is the real life," your brain automatically finishes the rest of the song. You know the mood, the lyrics, and exactly how it ends, because you know that it's Bohemian Rhapsody. So when Jesus screams that line we find in Matthew, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He's quoting the title of Psalm 22. He's telling every Pharisee scribe in that crowd, stop looking at my pain for a second and start thinking about the song that you've sang in the temple, Psalm 22. So let's look at how Matthew and John work together to show this checklist. Matthew records the scene so accurately that the allusions of Psalm 22 are undeniable. So let's begin by comparing them. Point 1. The mockers. Psalm 22 says, "All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me and they wag their heads. He committed his cause to the Lord. Let him deliver him." Matthew records that the people passing by wagged their heads, and the chief priest mocked him, saying, "He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him." These religious leaders think that they're insulting a criminal, but they're actually fulfilling the very psalm Jesus just headlined for them. They are literally reading the script of the villains in the poem. Point 2. The thirst and the piercing. Psalm 22 continues, "My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaves to my jaw. They have pierced my hands and my feet." See, crucifixion didn't exist in the time of King David when he wrote this, yet he describes the thirst and the piercing. John captures this perfectly by recording Jesus saying, "I thirst," and emphasizing the nails in the spear. Point 3. The clothing. The psalm says, "They divided my garments among them, and for my raiment they cast lots." See, Matthew writes, when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Think about this. Roman soldiers didn't know the Hebrew Bible. They were just bored, yet they are perfectly acting out this 1,000-year-old detail of the Messiah's execution. And then we get to the victory, when Jesus says, "It is finished." This is the part that changes the whole video. If you only hear the first line of Psalm 22, you think it's a tragedy. But remember the Incipit rule. If you quote the first line, you're invoking the entire song. How does Psalm 22 end? "All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations shall worship before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Yes, to him shall all the proud of the earth bow down. Before him shall bow all who go down to the dust. And he who cannot keep himself alive, posterity shall serve him. Men shall tell of the Lord to the coming generations, and proclaim his deliverance to the people yet unborn, that he has wrought it." That last phrase, that he has wrought it, literally means he has done it. Now, look at the Gospel of John. What are the final words of Jesus? "It is finished." Jesus wasn't crying out because he was lost or abandoned by the Father. He was shouting the title of a song that ends with global victory. He was telling the world, it looks like I'm losing, but I'm actually finishing the work that was written about me since the beginning. So, why does this matter to our faith today? because it changes how we see the passion. Matthew gives us the scripture that Jesus spoke, and John gives us the proof that it was all according to the plan. Jesus wasn't the victim of a bad day in Jerusalem, he was the author of the event, even while he was the one suffering through it. So when you feel forsaken, remember that Jesus used that very word to point out a plan of redemption that was 1,000 years in the making. He died for us, but he also taught us till his very last breath. So next time you read the Passion, don't just see the suffering, see the rabbi, see the king, see the man that used his very last moments to fulfill every promise. Thanks for watching. If this changed your perspective on the cross, hit that like button. And if you want to see something next, go ahead and put it in the comment section and tell me what you think about this video.